The next morning, I get a phone call from a supervisor with LA Center. I'm not going to use his name, but he basically tells me that he made a copy of the radar tape for me and sent me the copy of the radar tape. And the reason why, he said later they had a meeting with the higher echelon, or I'll call it the XO, CO, whatever. And after they came out of that meeting, emergency meeting, all the data around the tape was corrupted, but I had a copy of it.
Welcome to Merged. I'm Ryan Graves. Today, we're joined by Mark Hulsey. Mark's been a pilot since he's been 16 years old and flown everything from seaplanes to corporate jets to the F-18 Hornet. He has over 12,000 flight hours and he's a designated pilot examiner by the FAA. Mark, welcome. Thanks for joining me.
Oh, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
If you wouldn't mind, would you mind introducing yourself and just telling us a little bit about why you're here today?
Yeah, my name is Mark Hulsey. I'm a retired Marine F-18 pilot and a commercial pilot now for a private tech billionaire. And I saw some pretty interesting things a few months back, and that's why I'm here.
Very cool. So that was while you were flying over the United States?
That was just off the coast of California at 47,000 feet in the middle of the night, about 12 midnight.
Very cool. All right, well, we'll get back to that, but maybe you could tell me about when you joined the Navy. What year was it?
I joined the Marine Corps back in 1987 as an enlisted Marine.
Yeah.
And, went to meteorology school, became a meteorologist in the Marine Corps, and then got stationed in Iwakuni, Japan. Mm-hmm. And when I got back, my second duty station was Kaneohe Bay, Hawaii.
Oh, very nice.
I started flying helicopters there and finished out my commercial rating and flew helicopter tours on the side while I was based in Hawaii.
So you did helicopters and fixed wing?
Yes.
Very cool.
Well, I got out of the Marine Corps, went in the reserves, and I stayed in Hawaii for about 5 years flying helicopter tours.
Okay.
And then one day I just decided I'm not going to do it anymore. I want to fly jets. So I quit my job. I went to Embry-Riddle, and I did 2 years of college or 4 years of college in about a year and a half. So I had the highest credits ever attempted. I had 42 college credits in one semester.
Oh, wow. That's crazy.
Yeah, well, it took a lot of Johnny Walker red label wrapped around term papers, handing it to the instructors. But I got through. Everybody got through. They're all retired military. So they got me through there. I went to officer candidates course, finished there, and went to the basic school.
Yep.
And then did the same path you did. We went to API down in Pensacola, Florida. I wound up in Corpus Christi for primary. And since I had so much flight training, I had more helicopter and fixed wing time than any of the instructors I was flying with. So they put together a program where each of my flights counted for 2.5 flights. And that way, it was good and bad, because if I did good, I got one above would equal 2.5 aboves. But if I got one below in the entire training session, I wouldn't be a fighter pilot. So graduated there, went to Kingsville, and then from there went to selected Hornets and went to the fleet.
Awesome. What coast were you on?
I was on the East Coast for most of the time.
Okay. And so you guys were flying off the eastern seaboard?
Yeah, I was off of out of Beaufort, South Carolina, Marine Corps station there.
Okay.
And then we did a lot of debts down in Key West, and we came out to the West Coast and out to Yuma for debts and things like that.
Any combat deployments?
No, just when I enlisted. When I was enlisted, I was over in Desert Shield, Desert Storm.
As a infantryman, essentially?
Yes,
wow.
As a ground personnel. I actually worked with the Harrier units at the time, loading napalm and cluster bombs on the Harriers out of King Abdulaziz Air Base.
Did that motivate you to want to fly jets later on?
Because I was already a helicopter pilot at the time.
Yeah.
And I really loved the jet. I really loved the Harrier until I learned more about it. But it was a really cool jet, really cool concept.
Yeah.
But coming back, they used to show us motivational videos. They'd come back and they show these videos of their doing their missions.
Yeah.
They
the guys would come back and be like,
all the ground guys, they put it up on the tents,
man.
and they put the videos up on the tents, and we get to watch what our work was over there. It was pretty cool.
Very cool. Yeah, that's exciting. Nothing really motivates you actually seeing the work that gets done. It's hard to communicate. You film it, or like in the new Top Gun movie, you get to see it. But what they don't show you is like all the mental work that goes into it, the tactics, the things you're looking at, the scan. That's really cool.
Well, the pilot gets all the glory. All the work behind the scenes is all done by us.
Absolutely, that's right. Guys. Yep, loading the weapons, loading the jets. I mean, God forbid, on an aircraft carrier, the folks that are out on the top on the surface in the Gulf are exposed to extreme temperatures while they have all their safety gear on. So those guys put in 18-hour days to make those jets fly.
Absolutely. The pilot gets all the glory.
Absolutely, yeah. So when you were flying off the Eastern Seaboard, or really anywhere else in your career, did you have any weird experiences flying that you didn't have an explanation for?
Yeah, one that really comes to mind, and I had flashbacks on it after what happened off the coast of California. But what happened off of Buford was we were out doing BVR intercepts, and we got
Beyond visual range?
beyond visual range intercepts, and we were on cap, and we got a call from Sea Lord, and they asked us. This is right after 9/11, and they asked us if we can intercept an aircraft that wasn't talking. They had picked up an aircraft on the radar.
So Sea Lord, like the radar control facility that would looks out over the ocean essentially. And so they were saying, hey, something's either coming toward or is stationary out there that shouldn't be there.
Yeah, an aircraft was coming in the ADIZ, the Air Defense Interdiction. Yeah, interdiction.
Is it interdiction or
I think it's. I'm not sure. I'd have to look at that. I think
Air
it's
Defense Identification Zone.
Probably.
Figure it out.
It's been a long time. So we went ahead and, being fighter pilots, we're like, heck yeah, man, this is what we're trained to do. So we went into, being a Hornet pilot, we went into single target track. We found this guy, STT'd him, and we jumped. He was down around 5,000 feet, from what I recall. We were up at 25,000 feet, which is standard for doing BVR intercepts.
Yep.
So we found him. We pushed down to below 5,000, so our radars were looking up because we didn't want to be scrambled with the looking down for ground clutter into the water.
What radar was this?
The APG-73 at the time. So we got down, we STT'd him, and then we went in for the VID, visual identification. And then probably at about 5 miles prior to intercept, the track stopped on our radar. It just came to a halt. I mean, there was no closure rate anymore. And then it just maintained the same distance as we were close. And we were over Mach 1. I mean, we were an afterburner in the blower and going over Mach 1 trying to intercept this thing.
Wow, yeah.
And it just stopped. And it stayed there.
Relative to your aircraft?
Relative to on the radar, because we never got visual sighting of it. It just stayed there. Wow. And the next thing you know, it just started moving away from us, and it just basically flew off the screen.
So it would have had to have matched your airspeed at least to stay stationary on your radar, correct? If I understand this correctly.
Well, absolutely. But what really got us was the closure rate that we were having a massive closure rate on this thing, and then it just stopped almost instantly on the radar.
Wow.
And then it stayed there for a short period of time, and then it just disappeared off the radar. And we thought nothing of it, because we never experienced anything like that. We thought, well, maybe it was a glitch. You flew. You know what happens. You get glitches. You get ghost images. And then Sea Lord came back and said, they don't have track of it anymore. So we just came back, and it just became a debrief item. Yeah. We never even talked about it. It's not even something we brought up in the old club afterwards. It just came a debrief item because it was cool. It was, hey, that's our mission. We're going to get to go interdict something. It was awesome. But yeah, it turned out to be nothing.
Did you talk to any of your squadron mates about it?
Yeah, other people had similar instances where they'd see something on the radar and they'd go to run them down and the thing would disappear or run off the radar. But it wasn't really, people didn't really talk about it too much outside the squadron or outside of a debrief. We didn't really talk about it much in the ready rooms. It was just part of a debrief item usually.
Why do you think that was?
I don't want to say it was lack of education on it, but I just think that, being a fighter pilot, and especially in the training capacity, you've got too much other stuff thinking about to put your mental ability to focus on, hey, what was going on out there? It's basically, hey, this is what we did. You go through your debrief, and that's all you really care about. Everybody's just trying to get the X for the day.
Exactly.
So nobody really cared about it.
Yep.
We talked about it, but like I said, it was a debrief item. Never even thought about it until years later.
Mm-hmm. Did you ever think about contacting the radar facility or following up with them in any sense?
Not at that time, not at all. And they never reached out to us either. HUD tapes were basically just thrown back in the S2 and the Intel, and they just recycle them, as you know, with the bricks and everything. They just recycle them.
Yep.
We wouldn't keep anything.
Yep. Interesting.
Which is a shame nowadays. It would have been nice to have some of those radar tapes to analyze.
You would think if it was important enough to send a military aircraft to go intercept, and I assume you didn't have any weapons or anything on your aircraft.
No, right? we had CATM-9s, captive aim 9s, as you know.
Yep, so non-explosive IR-seeking close-range missiles, essentially.
Correct.
But these are not designed to leave the aircraft because it's just for training purposes. Okay. So they just kind of sent you out there to ID it. Now, I would think that since it was in the ADAs, it was worth investigation at that point, that it would be worth following up on that and seeing where those came from, or if there is some type of problem on our coastline.
Well, thinking back on it, what I found what was weird was, why did they send 2 unarmed fighter planes to go when they could have launched somebody out of Langley or somewhere, F-15s or something that could have done an intercept, or I think the F-22 Raptor was operating out of there also. So if it was some kind of threat, I don't know if they considered it a threat since it was low altitude at 5,000, around 5,000 feet, but that was something that was brought up.
Could it have been just maybe like a Cessna or something, do you think?
No,
Anyway?
No, with JATO bottles on it, on the wings. There's I don't know what it was. I'd love to be able to tell you. I'd love to have an explanation on what it was. But like I said, it turned into a debrief item, and never really even thought about it until after my encounter years later.
Did anyone in your command structure get wind of it?
Yeah, oh yeah, everybody. I mean, we told people about what happened, but nobody cared.
Any thoughts to a safety report? I know I'm not trying to say why you didn't do more, but because I completely get it. But,
yeah, absolutely not.
Yeah.
There was no safety stand. There was nothing. Nothing. It basically became a debrief item, and somebody would ask what happened out there, or somebody else would see something, but nobody really talked about it because it wasn't anything that we really cared about.
If you could have changed that scenario, how would you do it differently? Do you think it would be like a squadron level reporting, you think?
Well, there
or
would have been
communication with the tower, perhaps? The radar?
It would have been great if we would have been able to keep all radar tapes and have them copied for further analysis.
Kind of a correlation after effect between what the radar facility was seeing and what the pilots were seeing in real time.
That would have been nice. It would also been nice to have a all pilots meeting through the MAG, Marine Aircraft Group, just to tell the pilots, hey, if you encounter something out there, some kind of reporting system would have been great, just to let anybody else know this is what we're seeing out there. That would have been a really helpful thing to have.
No NOTAMs or anything, though?
Yeah, no, nothing at all. It was never even mentioned, ever. Like, I've never seen anything flying in the military where anybody's ever said, hey, we're seeing unidentified aircraft out there.
Yeah. What year was this?
This happened in about 2002, I believe.
Okay.
Roughly, somewhere around there.
2002.
Is the best of my recollection. Somewhere around there.
Interesting.
When Sea Lord reached out and asked us to do a visual ID intercept because they had a target out there that wasn't talking to them or squawking.
Squawking is
squawking
identify
for
friend or foe.
Yeah, for squawk, like a transponder. So every aircraft, especially coming into the United States from the ADIZ, is given a specific transponder code, so they know what aircraft it is. And this didn't have a transponder code. It wasn't squawking. Low altitude. It wasn't relatively fast coming towards the coast of the United States. So when we intercepted it, that's why we're like, this is great. We jumped out at 25,000 feet, lit the blowers, and went down below it, so our radar's looking up instead of down into the water. And we got within probably about 5 miles, like I said, and it just stopped on our radar. And the thing about it is we did have a TD box around it.
You did?
So yeah, when we were in STT, we had a TD box around it.
Did you have it on your radar before you went into STT, which, for those that may not be aware, it's just kind of a more concentrated radar mode that the APG-73 could get into. So did you have to really target it to get enough energy there to see it, or was it just kind of on your radar?
No, they told us where it was. So once we committed, I'm going to have a hard time remembering terminology. It's been so many years, but basically they gave us, I believe we were using Vegas as a waypoint, right, for home. So they is our main point. So they were giving us intercepts off of Vegas to do this intercept. Yep. And then we picked it up on our radar. We started looking down, scanning down and looking in the two bar for whatever it was, the concentrated one. And then once we hit it, we went to STT on it, and then we locked it up. Got it. And that's when we jumped out of 25,000 feet and just screamed down to the water. And it was a race to know who was going to be down, who was going to be the shooter, who the VID eyeball and shooter, right? And then we ran to intercept these guys. And like I said, at about 5 miles, it just stopped on the radar, just completely stopped.
When that happened, what was the relative aspects?
Well, if you remember on radar on the APG-73, the reason why you jumped into the notch is because the radar if you jump the notch, you disappear, right? Because if there's nothing moving, so that was another question that popped out. Like, well, how could that be if it's just sitting on the radar? But
Because radars typically they are reflecting energy off of moving objects.
Absolutely.
So if it's staying completely stationary relative to the aircraft, that would be more difficult to see. So it's interesting that you continued to see it.
Absolutely. And then it moved away from us, and it flew off,
Interesting.
it just moved right off the screen.
Was it showing a target aspect? Could you kind of tell your relative?
Oh yeah, it had an aspect
directions?
vector. Absolutely had an aspect vector on it. We were right out. I mean, we were going right for it. We were
You had you merged with it,
we were coming right for the merge. Oh yeah, we were doing the shooter eyeball.
Yep. and so
VID.
and then you just never got there, right? Because it
Never got there
kinda
'cause it
Knew where
stopped.
you're heading at least, right?
Well, we put a direct intercept on it.
Yeah.
I mean, it was coming. We were going right down the pipe at it, and it stopped.
Interesting.
And then it just flew off from us, and then we never thought anything about it. Like, okay, it's gone. The TD box, I remember, it started flashing, and then the thing just disappeared.
It was one of those flash, and then it
Yep.
Was there any altitude change that you
Nope,
remember?
absolutely zero altitude change.
Okay,
Stayed at the same altitude. The only thing that changed was the aspect vector of it. Right, it came out and turned around and went away, but it didn't. Remember on the radar, I don't know if we could talk about this, but remember on the radar, it shows you the aspect vector of the target, right?
Yep.
It's got that never changed. That aspect vector never changed, which was really strange.
Okay, so it was pointing towards you.
Towards us.
Yep. And so what that would represent is you coming nose to nose with that object, and then it essentially went in reverse while that target aspect was still pointed at you.
Yes.
Wow, that's really strange. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So yeah, that is very interesting. When we were seeing the objects off the East Coast in the 2014 time frame, I could recognize the object on the radar because we have the target aspect, and now this is in the APG-79, and we would see the target aspect, but it would move. And normally in an aircraft, it's putzing along, and you see that target aspect move smooth, just like the aircraft is moving essentially. But this one would be very jagged or jumpy. It would kind of like skip around, and it would, on average, seem to be flowing in a direction based off of that target aspect. So it'd be moving in this general direction, but the target aspect would still kind of be moving around. Because of that jerky target aspect, that's how I could look on the radar and be like, that's probably one of those things, that we have been seeing. And because of that, to freeze up the target aspect, that's even more interesting to me, I think, because that means I don't know what that means.
I don't either.
Yeah.
I don't either. Yeah, just some, like I said, there's a lot of, you call them radar anomalies, you call it whatever you want, but the fact that we weren't able to get a visual ID on it is what really sucks. But,
Well, 5 miles, that's not too far away.
Nope.
And you had the TD box, so you knew where to look.
Oh yeah, it's right in the HUD.
Yep.
Right in the HUD.
Yep, because you're coming nose on. And that's the
Absolutely.
position I've been in the with the JHEMIX, Joint Helmet Mounted Queuing System. So did you ever fly with that?
No, that was way before my
Yep.
time.
So I had pretty much all the same tools, but then there's the helmet as well, which really just plays the role of the HUD when I look away from it. So if I'm looking at the HUD, there's nothing on my visor. And if I look away from the HUD, now that information that was on the HUD is now on my visor. So it kind of moves with me. And when you're coming up to that merge, your nose on, and it would be in your HUD. And then as that merge consummates, that person, the relative velocity takes off, right? And that box kind of moves up and past, or however you actually merge with it. And I would see the TD box on the objects we were seeing, and it would be right in front, just like yours was. And it would eventually come past on the actual merge itself, and nothing was there. We couldn't see anything, but we still see it on the FLIR. We still see it on the radar, and we could even circle back and still see it. They didn't just disappear when we merged with them, and we didn't obviously have the fuel or anything to continuously do that. But so yeah, interesting.
But you never visually were able
I personally was not able to visually see it. Over time, people in my squadron and other squadrons would visually see that. And it seemed to happen when it was unintentional in a sense. When we specifically hey, let's go check this thing out. At least for me, right? I never saw one, and I did that 100% of the time. And I know other squadron mates that were in the same position, and I hope to interview some of them about this. But there were others that were surprised and had near midair with these objects, and they were able to visually see them. So
When you had them come down your aircraft, how close were they to you?
within 50 feet is our best estimate for one of the first times we saw.
And you
the
couldn't, so
objects.
they were visually stealth,
I'm
you
saying
think?
the one they visually saw was about 50 feet away.
But how about you? Were they visually
Personally,
stealth,
when
you
I
think?
came to the merge, trying to respect the 500-foot safety bubble, essentially, And that's very close. I mean, I should be able to see a bird.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So we weren't seeing anything.
Yeah, and then the difference in ours was we would never let us get close to it. I mean, the thing just stopped and then flew away from us.
Yeah,
We
that's
never
a
able to get
different
close to
behavior.
it, which is really
It
weird.
didn't turn away, right? Like there was no like turn.
There was no
radius?
turn aspect. There was nothing. The thing just stopped on the radar, just completely stopped on the radar, and then moved off straight ahead, straight away. Not in an angle, not any other direction. No aspect change, no altitude delta, nothing. It just moved away from us in the same direction that we were traveling.
This is interesting, right? So it was on your radar, and the target aspect was facing you, and what that means is like essentially that's representative of an aircraft just coming at you, trundling along, flying nose to nose at you, and then what we typically expect to see if one of these aircraft was going to move, it would essentially turn, right? Like you would see it turn through 180 degrees and essentially fly in the opposite direction, right? And we do that all the time, right? We call it various things, but we fly away to try to run away from missiles or enemies and things of that nature. The fact that the target aspect didn't change is interesting to me because we had a case off the coast of Jacksonville, Florida, which is very close to the area.
It's not too far at all. It's just south of.
It's in between the two where the gimbal was videotaped and where we're having the daily issues off of Virginia Beach. It's right in the middle of those two, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So when we saw the gimbal object, we saw it on our situational awareness page, and that's a God's eye view of everything that's happening. Did you have that page when you were flying? Okay.
Absolutely.
And so the gimbal object, when we observed its movement on the SA page, it simply went in one direction, and just like what you described, no turn radius or anything, it just simply went in the other direction. The target aspect in this case, on this radar, perhaps, the ABG-79, was able to see the stuttering of the target aspect. I wonder, since you were able to essentially zoom in with your radar with the APG-73, so you were putting more energy into that piece of the sky, you were able to see these objects. Perhaps when the target aspect didn't change and it went in the opposite direction, maybe it performed the same type of vertical turn that the gimbal object.
It probably could have. If you think about in layman's terms, it's like two cars doing a head-on collision, right? And all of a sudden, the car you're getting ready to run in head-on just basically is going in the same direction, 180 degrees opposite direction instantaneously. Mm-hmm. So aircraft, as you know, can't do that. Only aircraft that can do that are like helicopters, but helicopters can't fly that fast, right? They're limited to about 180 knots. Mm-hmm. I think the fastest one in the world is like 210 knots or something. We were going, Mach 1 to intercept this. Yeah. And the closure rate on it was well over Mach 1 on the closure rate. And there's nothing out there that could have done that.
Do you remember what it was?
I don't remember what the closure rate was. It's too long ago, but I know I was over Mach 1 on the intercept.
So it was coming in at you at some, velocity.
Oh, absolutely.
Got it.
I mean, the closure rate was pretty darn quick. And then for it just to stop instantaneously. I know if I were to stop going Mach 1 instantaneously, I wouldn't be here today. I'd be dead. Yeah. Right? It's probably like jumping off the Golden Gate Bridge and hitting the water, hitting like concrete. You'd be dead. Your organs rip apart. Yeah. But it just literally stopped right away. It didn't, when you're asking about velocity intercepts, what I remember from that day was it didn't slow down. We didn't see it slow down at all. It just stopped and just stayed there.
Wow.
And then continued off the other direction.
Wow.
And you think about this, for an object, and you know this as a fighter pilot, for an object to go from stationary to greater than Mach 1 to run away, especially, I mean, it would take some kind of missile, like an AMRAAM missile or something, something
like
that's
a missile behavior. That's not how an aircraft can accelerate.
To run away, right?
And at those altitudes, you're not going to be speeding up very quickly unless you're descending or doing anything like that.
Not around 5,000 feet. Exactly. I mean, that air is so thick. There's no way. I mean, you can't even hit you got to do the Rakowski climb even on a depart to make Mach 1, right?
Yep.
Remember that?
Yep.
That
so
maneuver.
that's a climb, at least in the Charlie, where you actually have to level off every so often. You regain speed to climb at an optimal fuel rate. In the F-18 or in the Super Hornet, the newer variant of the Charlie Delta models. Our Rakowski climb is essentially just a steady rate climb at a fixed pitch, slightly different.
Yeah, we would take off. You would take off. I did a lot of red air, so I would always I'd always be the deck launch intercept, right, for trainers. So
so that's pretending to be the bad guys for the blue air, the friendly fighters, your squadron mates or other squadrons?
Absolutely. So you take off, and we'd get up to about 8,000 or 10,000 feet, and then you nose over, hit Mach 1, and then you maintain Mach 1 to climb. So that was ours.
Super Hornet cannot climb in over Mach.
Yeah.
That's for sure.
Yeah.
At least with the external tank on and everything else. So yeah, that's certainly some interesting behavior. Would you expect any other assets that we had in 2002 to behave like that? I mean, of course, helicopters, drones, perhaps. I mean,
drones can't fly that fast. It's impossible, right? And even if drones could fly that fast, you'd see an aspect change if they were going to turn.
Yep,
right.
That's true.
You'd see it.
And it was in 2000.
Yeah, and they didn't have any kind of drones or anything that would have done it at that time. There's not even, I mean, even the F-22 Raptor. Well, first of all, we wouldn't have seen him on radar, right? The F-22 Raptor. They wouldn't have. There's no way, because that thing, we would have seen him turn. And could they have ran away from us? Oh, absolutely. You know that. But we would have seen him. We'd have seen him turn. And the Sea Lord wouldn't have sent us out there to intercept it either.
That's true.
Right?
Absolutely.
They would have known he was out there.
How far off the coast was it again?
It was right by the ADIZ, so, just over about 14, 15 miles off the coast is what I believe.
Was that actually in your working areas?
Yeah, it's actually in the whiskey area.
It was.
Yeah,
Okay. Yep.
absolutely.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Well, how about we skip ahead a little bit? Maybe we can talk a little bit, if you wouldn't mind, just kind of provide a little background about what your flying career looks like now.
Yeah, so,
Transition a little bit.
I retired from the Marine Corps, and I went to work for, I've been always flying tech billionaires for these big companies. And then I flew for a bunch of the big guys up in the Bay, Silicon Valley, 737s, typed in 737s, and multiple Gulfstreams, Citations, hold single, multi, and helicopter ATP ratings, CFI, II. Just became a designated pilot examiner for the FAA, so which means I can give pilots their pilot's license, go out and give them check rides and actually issue pilots ratings. Have an aeronautical science degree, meteorology, and communications degree from Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University. Attended the aviation safety accident investigation with the Marine Corps and Navy, through the Navy school.
Down in Pensacola?
Yeah, in Pensacola at the time.
I went to the same course.
Yeah, it was great course.
It's very good training.
I served under General Trotman and done multiple investigations of different things, like one we talked about of the F-18 Hornet dropping a bomb on a man tower down in Australia.
Wow.
So I've got a lot of experience in aviation assets and multiple aircraft. I mean, I fly multiple aircraft to this day.
Maybe that's why your clients trust you.
I hope. And I fly with I have an identical twin brother.
Oh, the plot thickens.
Yeah, he was a Marine, White House Marine. So him and I fly together right now. So I think we're the only twins who actually work together flying for a company anywhere.
Interesting.
Yeah, which is
we
a lot
had
of fun.
two twins in Meridian, Mississippi when I was instructor there for the T-45 Goshawk. We had two twin students, and they split them into the two different squadrons. I still think it was some type of test, but I don't know.
How do you know they weren't swapping like?
Yeah, exactly.
You guys good at instrument, or, BIRIs.
Do you have any brother swapping stories you'd like to share?
Oh no, not at this time.
Oh, okay. Very good.
We had some fun growing up. Yeah, we've had a lot of fun. But my brother has to wear a goatee, so the boss. The boss can tell him
he's
apart.
the evil twin then.
Yeah, that's what everybody calls him. Yeah, he wears a goatee, so my boss can tell us apart instantly as soon as he sees us.
Cool.
Yeah,
That's funny.
Yeah, a lot of fun flying with him. But yeah, that's pretty much my aviation career. I mean, I'm still flying today. I still fly today for multiple companies. I do a lot of contract work.
I've been hearing from a lot of commercial pilots that they have been seeing things over the continental United States, over the western coast between Hawaii. And what they've been seeing, at least what I've been communicating with, and of course, we're going to hear what you have to say, but I've been hearing other pilots talk about lights up in the sky. Maybe they're in orbit, maybe they're right above the aircraft. It's a little difficult to tell. My first thought is perhaps, it's Starlink or things of that nature. But your story, I understand, these objects are moving in ways that really aren't consistent with that. But yeah, what did you see? And was it just you, or was there anyone else that saw these objects?
Well, we had another pilot in the cockpit that saw it, but he was paying attention to other things in the cockpit. He happened to look over and see it, and he shunned it off. He's non-military, so he assumed it was probably some kind of military aircraft. The big thing to me, I was at 47,000 feet.
That's
and
very high.
For people don't realize, airliners, the highest I've ever heard an airliner go was like 41, but that's extremely rare. They only do it maybe to get over storms or if the jet stream's really strong and they want to get up there. But most airliners are between like 28 and 38,000 feet, most of them, right? So we're at 47,000 feet. So we're above everybody. The only people that should be above us could be another Gulfstream. At our service ceiling is 51,000 feet. But at 51,000 feet, you're only there. You can only be there maybe the last 20 minutes of a flight.
Yeah.
And you're not going to, nobody's going to go that high. Nobody does. And you're not going to be able to move. You're not have any maneuverability. I mean,
Why is that?
well, the air, as you know, the air is super thin. So you have to have either a big surface area, and you're also going to have velocity to make up the same amount of lift that you would down, let's say, 5,000 feet, right? So anytime you make a turn, you're reducing that lift. So to you reduce that lift, you're going to have to add thrust and pitch, right? Because you got to maintain the same the lift to be able to fly, to be able to perform the same amount of lift to fly. So to do that, you're going to need more power, more thrust, right? So in that turn, at those altitudes, it's going to create more G forces because you're going to have more thrust, you're going to be pulling more G's to maintain the same.
And you burn off energy more when you're
Absolutely. So you're going to have to be adding more thrust. And the G forces, you remember turning G forces, how turning tight G forces. Right now, if I took a Gulfstream to 51,000 feet, which is higher than I was at 47,000, and try to make a 180-degree turn or a 360-degree turn, it'd probably cover well over 10-mile radius.
It'd be a 10-mile turn just because the air is so thin.
Because the air is so thin. The aircraft actually goes into what's called half-angle bank turn when you're up that high, and it will not do a standard rate turn. It'll do a half.
The computer will stop
The computer will stop it because it knows if you do, the airplane's going to stall and it's going to lose out. It's going to come out of the sky. So the airplane will not allow you to do that. The Gulfstream 650 is a pretty smart airplane. It won't let you stall it. So
you're way up there.
Yeah, we're really, really high.
Yeah.
Nobody's above us.
And so I haven't even been like that high in a fighter jet. We go up there and we mess around and we try to do the same thing and really get to the point where if we made any turn, we're going to just fall out of the sky essentially.
Well, back to when I was in the Marine Corps, I had to take an A model F-18 Hornet single seat and take it down to Jacksonville, Florida, to NAS Jax. Well, I think they decommissioned at the time, but that's where they did all the depot level maintenance. So they stripped the F-18 down. I mean, it's super light and had a full bag of gas, right? And I'm taking off out of Beaufort, and it's only like a 35-minute flight down to Jacksonville. I got a whole bag of gas, and what am I going to do? I'm going to go out and play, right?
Sure.
So I took off, and I remember I got it up into the high 50s.
Yeah.
But to be that high, I was in straight level flight, and I was in full afterburner just to maintain altitude.
Exactly.
So you could tell that it takes so much. And afterburner, you remember how much thrust the afterburner has in a Hornet. Even though it has a short, stubby wing, it took that much thrust just to maintain altitude. The second I pulled the throttle off out of afterburner, the aircraft started to descend.
Okay.
I couldn't keep altitude.
So you're at 50,000, or you're at 47,000 feet.
Yes.
Really, any higher than your aircraft get, or even some of our modern fighters. Now, I understand, and I'm sure you do too, but the F-22, F-35, especially the F-22, is maneuverable at higher altitudes. But really, they don't go to the moon. I mean, you're already pretty high up there. So let's take a step back and we're way up there. And what did you see?
So I just happened to look out and I saw a light circling. And I thought, when I first looked up at it, I'm like, well, that's pretty strange. And it's got to be another aircraft.
Like a big, kind of lazy loop?
When first I saw it, it was like a light, and then I saw another one coming behind it, and it was almost two lights doing a 180 like we would do on a
cross a circle.
A cross circle, like a two-circle flight, right? So I look up and I see it, and I'm like, oh, that's really strange. What's going to be above us? But at that time, they weren't turning. It was, I saw one, I believe it was coming towards the aircraft, and I looked up and I'm like, oh wow, there's somebody going above us. And then all of a sudden,
it looked like it was coming, crossing.
It looked like it was a crossing traffic. And then as I'm looking at it and I'm doing this, all of a sudden another one comes out from over the cockpit, and they were probably
from the same direction,
opposite direction. So 180.
Oh, got it.
Right, but they were high. They weren't like a couple thousand feet. They were probably 8,000 or 10,000 feet above us. I mean, they were pretty high, right? Yeah. But you have no depth perception at night. That's the problem with it. So there's no depth perception. But what I could tell, they were probably 8,000 to 10,000 feet above us.
Perhaps if they were a fighter-sized aircraft or an aircraft like you're flying at this moment.
No idea.
Because I see things through like, okay, well, I know what an F-18 looks like at this distance, and so that's my like internal compass for things. So I kind of wondering maybe you might have been using something.
Didn't see any shapes or anything. All I saw was lights.
So you're kind of using those two lights to say, hey, if they were moving maybe at the speed that I'm familiar with as a pilot, then they would be 8,000 to 10,000 feet above this aircraft.
That's about the best judgment I can do because there's no depth perception.
Yeah.
There's nothing,
Very
right?
difficult.
And especially at night, you can't tell. So the first thing I did when I saw it is I looked down at TCAS, Traffic Collision Avoidance System, and I looked down to see if anybody was above us.
Okay.
And I didn't see anything. So I went into the box and I switched it to above to look to nothing but above, nothing on the box. And then I thought, okay, well, these guys, maybe it's military. So what I started thinking, maybe it's some kind of military. And then all of a sudden there were 3 lights. And then they moved from where they were disappearing over the cockpit. They actually moved, and their circular pattern moved away from the window where I could actually see it look like a racetrack pattern.
So it was a racetrack. It went from they were circling and then they were cross-tracking towards the aircraft, but then they went back away towards the aircraft?
They moved back away from us.
Okay.
Just at an angle about...
And you didn't make any
this.
turns?
Oh, absolutely not. Where autopilot was on, we were heading... Well, I think we were doing like 0.88 Mach, which is 8.8 miles a minute, right?
Yeah.
And then I saw the third one, and I'm like, well, that doesn't make any sense. So I called air traffic control, and I just asked, hey, is there any military, is there... I got some lights up here. I'm paraphrasing because I don't remember exactly what the conversation was, but I basically asked them, hey, what's going on? You guys have aircraft above us?
You kind of expected them to maybe have them on the radar or something.
Oh, yeah. I just expected them to come back and say, yeah, there's military conducting operations, because it was right off the coast of California, right? And I thought, well, maybe it's something out of, something launched out of Edwards Air Force Base, or, we got Point Magoo's over there. Maybe there might be something going on, right? Vandenberg, who knows what's going on.
Okay.
And air traffic control came back and said, no, we have nothing on the radar. And I'm like, that's really weird.
Yeah.
And I think I asked them if there's any military operations going on, and she said, no, there's nothing. No military operations in the area.
And they would know, right? Like they would get contact sometimes? Yeah.
They should know. So I continued to watch it for a minute, and then a fourth light appeared. And then what really got me was what I thought was a shooting star. This is where it gets a little weird. I thought it was a shooting star, right? Because I'm looking at these things and I'm like, oh, awesome. I get to see, I'm looking at the stuff here and I see it looks like a shooting star.
Yeah.
It actually stopped and joined the formation. And that's the one that's the one that really, I was like, what the heck? I made another call to air traffic control and told them, hey, there's 5 lights now, and one of them just came down from above and joined the formation.
Oh, wow.
And then we watched them. It happened for a while. They asked other aircraft if they'd seen it, and nobody, everybody kept saying, no, we don't see anything. So I don't remember the exact period. It's been such a long time now. But it tracked us. And this is something else that was really strange. It wasn't a stationary orbit. It was a moving orbit.
So you didn't move past it?
No, it followed us.
It kind of, okay.
They were orbiting, following us. So if they were following us, they had to be whatever the maneuvering speed was for the track, but they were also moving with us at 0.88 Mach. So that's what was the really strange part about it, because they were moving along with us. And I thought it was the strangest thing I've ever seen. And it followed along for a while, a couple more radio calls to air traffic control. And then they had moved over the cockpit. They moved back out. And then that one time they came back over the cockpit's the last time I saw them. Didn't think anything else out. We were getting ready to hit, I think it was called Dinty, is a reporting point that when we push off and switch over to HF Freaks to head over to Hawaii. So the last time I checked in with air traffic control, nobody else was reporting anything. So we get to Maui, and then the next morning I get a phone call from a supervisor with LA Center, and I'm not going to use his name, but he basically tells me that he made a copy of the radar tape for me and sent me the copy of the radar tape. He emailed it to me.
Awesome.
And the reason why, he said later they had a meeting with the higher echelon, or I'll call it the XO, CO, whatever. And after they came out of that meeting, emergency meeting, all the data around the tape was corrupted. But I had a copy of it. So he also told me that other airline pilots had called in later, the same ones that are apparently were on
Saying
the
they didn't see
radio
them
saying
around.
they didn't see anything, called in after they landed and said, yeah, they saw something. They didn't want their official record on the radar tape, on the radar tapes.
FAA tapes.
Absolutely.
Interesting. Yeah,
That they didn't want to report it.
I've heard that before.
And I thought that was really strange. So then they told me that I was going to be getting a call, or gave me a number, said you're going to be getting a call from this number. And it turned out it's I forget what it was. It was some JTOC or a Joint Air Defense, whatever it was, whatever the acronym stands for, called me. And they debriefed me on it. They want to know exactly what happened. And I told them. It lasted about a 45-minute phone call with these guys. And then they recommended I call the National UFO Reporting Site just to let them know. That way they can use their Freedom of Information Act to pull radar tapes. And then they told me that my report was going to go into a report going to Congress. So there had been a lot of interesting sites. Then next thing I know, I get a phone call from, I believe it was a phone call from Ben Hansen, who had heard about it, and he started talking to me about
Who's
it.
Ben?
Ben Hansen is he's a retired FBI agent, and he's a UFO researcher, paranormal researcher. Okay. And he started looking into my story. He heard about it. I think through the UFO reporting line, he heard about it, and then he started investigating, and he started trying to pull FOIA, Freedom of Information Act, to get this information from SoCal, TRACON, right?
Potentially corrupted radar data.
Correct. And then I started receiving information from other controllers that bad things would happen to them if they were to come out and talk about the radar tapes of what they saw. And then one of them had told me about just recently, I wish I could pull it up. I forget the name of the F-18 squadron. I could pull it up later and tell you the name of the F-18 squadron.
Yeah.
They were out there flying, doing stuff off of Catalina, and they were reporting underwater activity, lights underwater moving at speeds that were
Really?
impossible for anything to move that fast. Obviously, water's
So
denser,
this is a Navy F-18 squadron is operating in the same area as you're seeing these objects above your aircraft for a period of time.
Absolutely.
And you're now finding out that they were reporting seeing lights under the water.
Yes.
What the fuck?
Yeah, I don't. Well, I don't know what it was, and then more air traffic controllers reached out and started asking me more questions and saying, that they wanted to talk about it. They'd like to talk. Guys wanted to share more stories about what happened off the record, because if they came out, they said it wouldn't end well for them. They'd probably lose their jobs. But more people started coming out. Come to find out, I found out from an air traffic controller that another, I believe it was a Hawaiian airline guy, had reported what I saw. It's similar but different, right? His was not over his aircraft. His was, I think, at a distance. But people had started reporting seeing weird things weeks before, and nobody had said anything. So when my radar tape came, or the radar tape I had, I sent it to Ben Hansen. So Ben Hansen put it on the internet. And once he put that on the internet, next thing you know, all these airline pilots started coming forward and saying, hey, guess what? I saw something also. So it sort of opened Pandora's box, and now everybody's coming out and talking about things that they've seen, and people seeing lights flying. And
so the pilots are talking about this.
pilots
now.
are coming out now talking about it. And I didn't transmit anything over the radio because I wanted publicity or anything. I was just doing my duty as a pilot. Informing air traffic controller, asking it.
We trained for that. I mean,
what is it?
Reacted that way because that's the right procedure. That's the right thing to do. Like,
Absolutely.
having uncertainty in our operating space like that is the last thing we work towards. So yeah.
Something else that's really weird. If I was on the ground, or if I was at 12,000 feet in a Cessna, even at 25,000 feet in a Citation flying, and I looked up and saw the lights, I wouldn't even have looked up twice. I would have thought, more airplanes. I wouldn't even have thought twice.
Because you're so high.
But what got me was at 47,000 feet, and I know nobody's above us. Nobody is. And everybody starts saying, hey, it's probably military. I said, okay, let's say it is military. Where are the military landing lights? They're on the landing gear. You think a military pilot, a military aircraft's going to fly around with its landing gear down? It wouldn't be able to maintain flight at that altitude.
Yeah.
And no military aircraft's going to make those kind of turns. I mean, who can make those kind of tight turns at that altitude? I know it's going to take me 10 miles on my Gulfstream
10 miles.
to make a turn, and I have a massive 100-foot wingspan. What's it going to take if something? I don't know how big this was. I don't know if it was a small object, as small as a table, just a big light, or if it was a massive object. I don't know. I couldn't see anything but the lights, which was really strange. And the lights never disappeared. The lights as they came on me, they were really bright, and then as they started to move away, but the lights were still, I could still see the lights. They never disappeared. So they weren't directional. They weren't fixed at a fixed direction. It was like almost like a nav light on a
at
ship.
the bottom where you can see
where
it
it's
from.
always there.
Yeah.
Where it's always there. But it
Interesting.
was more defined when it was coming around the circle towards me. It got really bright and then it faded out, but it was still there. It never
Interesting, yeah.
disappeared.
Very
It was
interesting.
always there. And at the end, I believe there were 7 total flying.
7?
7 total, I believe, at the very end and flying in formation. So I believe the 5th one joined them from above. It was either the 5th or 6th one joined from above, and then another 1 or 2, whatever order it was. And there were a total of 7 at the very end.
Oh, wow.
But you could hear that on my air traffic control tapes when I came in and I reported to air traffic control. And that's when it really got me, because I jumped on there and said, hey, 1 just joined it from above. Now there's 7, 1 or 6 or 7. 1 just joined from above, came in from above and joined them. Wow. And here's what's funny. I got a copy of the air traffic control tape of the lady making a call to her supervisor, and they were laughing about it. And then when she said, well, hey, this guy is reporting it again, and he said he's a retired Marine F-18 pilot, then their attitude changed, like, okay, this isn't just some whack job out there, just making stuff up. Because I told them, listen, I've done I've done intercepts and everything. I've never seen anything like it.
Yeah.
So their attitude sort of changed when they found out that I had a little bit of credibility behind me.
That
as
speaks
somebody
to
who
me
does
as
that.
like a lack of just integration into our aviation safety framework in the United States. I mean, globally, but even in the United States, I know they probably laugh just because they weren't familiar with the topic and what have you. But I believe that the policies and the procedures for reporting this and actually following up on the data are going to help alleviate that. Because
Well, I hope so, because you shouldn't have. It doesn't matter if I was an F-18 pilot or if I was a student pilot. A sighting is a sighting. If somebody sees something that's unexplained, they should take every single report with the same enthusiasm, right? It doesn't matter. I mean, anybody can get out there and make a story up, and it's up for the evidence to speak for themselves. I wish I had video of it. I don't have video of it. All I have is my word and what I saw over the radio. But how many pilots don't say anything? I mean, it's obvious. The airline pilots called in and said, hey, yeah, we saw something, but they didn't want to say it over the radio.
I wonder why that was.
I've talked to other airline guys, old retired airline captains, and they said that it was against company policy. You could lose your medical. They can think you have some psychological problems, and you lose your medical, right? You lose your medical, you lose your job. You can't fly anymore.
Yep. Exactly.
Medical, not meaning medical. It's the medical I'm
yearly
talking
checkup
about.
to say you're
you have to
good to
go
go.
every year to an aircraft medical examiner and get evaluated by a doctor and says, hey, you're capable, competent to be a pilot. You're physically capable of being a pilot.
And you essentially have to probably explain that. Even if they did sign off on it, that would be like an issue you'd probably have to discuss every time.
It would if something got put in your record, your FAA record, it never goes away ever. So even if it wasn't in your airline record, let's say they sent you in for a mental evaluation, it's in your permanent record for the rest of your life.
Yeah.
So guys just don't want to deal with it. They don't. They just want to put their head down and not say anything.
Yeah,
Or they'll
how
make
many-
an anonymous call.
How many
right?
people trying to go for a commercial airline job after they get a military want something like that sitting in their file?
Or how many just regular pilots that never went in
Yeah.
the military? At least we have some credibility behind us for what it's worth. But how many guys are out that get their commercial license that are flight instructors that see things that they don't know what they are, and they don't want to report it because they don't want the stigma attached to it. And I hope that I don't care. I'm not in fear of losing my job. My boss is completely, he completely trusts me and he's got confidence in me. He knows I'm not going to make up a story for what am I going to get out of it. I've got nothing but hassle from it.
Yeah.
As soon as it hit the internet, I started getting all kinds of weird phone calls and harassing emails and my social media. Oh, here's one I got to tell you. This is great. I forgot about this. So I posted that video. Online.
Which video?
The bootleg video the guy sent me from the radar tapes.
Oh, you did?
I posted that online on my Instagram, and next thing you know, my Instagram was deactivated.
Really?
Couldn't get access to it.
Very interesting.
And I reported that to Ben also, let Ben know, and I also told there was another news station that talked to me about it, and I let them know the same thing, that they had deactivated, they shut down my Instagram account.
That's particularly relevant right now as
Absolutely.
Elon Musk seems to be opening the curtain
Yeah,
behind
absolutely.
Twitter's behavior.
And then once all these other pilots started coming out and all this thing started hitting the news and people started talking about it, guess what? My account came back online, but guess what wasn't on the account?
That file was gone?
My file was gone.
Strange how that works.
Yeah, that was another weird thing. And then somebody brought up that, they wanted to put in a Freedom of Information Act through Instagram, which I think is owned by Facebook, right?
I think so.
I think so. To try to find out why they shut my account down and why they deleted the file.
Yeah. I guess someone could figure that out.
Which is really
That's
weird.
Interesting, yeah.
Yeah.
So how did that file end? They were laughing, just generally kind of dismissive of the sighting, if you will, right?
Yeah.
And then what? Anything else?
No, nothing else. They just, they said they didn't know anything was out there. They couldn't see anything, and they basically just handed me off to the other controlling agency, and that was it. And then I heard a different file that from, I think it was later on in the morning, that Ben Hansen was able to get a hold of her calling her supervisor again, the one that she called, and they were laughing about it, called and said, hey, we've got, whatever airline, whatever is reporting lights. And like, another one? And then, they realized, okay, something's going on here. There's something being seen out here, and they just didn't know what it was.
Interesting.
Yeah. So there's other audio tapes from air traffic control. So there's still a FOIA. They're still trying to pull information from these guys to figure out what really happened and why the radar tapes would have been corrupted.
Yeah, that's disappointing.
But I have a copy of it. Thank goodness the gentleman that the supervisor sent me a copy of it.
Oh, good.
And that's how it got out there.
We're going to pull up and we're going to listen to that tape footage that you provided, and we're going to hear what they have to say.
Roger. And then the F-18s were call sign shock
Okay, got that.
off
Roger.
of the Carolina.
The ones that were seeing these objects underwater. And they were seeing lights, too,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Very interesting. All right, let's give this a listen.
So I have this Twilight 670 that's like 25 west of LA at 47,000 feet. He said that there are 3 aircraft high above him orbiting. And I don't know.
Well, that's kind of weird.
In any military airspace. He said, yeah, they're just kind of going around in circles.
Yeah, that's kind of weird. Okay.
He's at 47,000 feet, and he said they're pretty far above him. So,
Yeah. I wonder if it's just like, I don't know.
The first thing I thought was a satellite or something.
Yeah, that's exactly what I'm thinking.
So, one, how did that make you feel with them laughing? Like that, as from like a safety perspective, when would that be acceptable, really?
Well, I didn't hear them laughing over the radio. It was only after I received the audio. Excuse me, language. It pissed me off. And it made me feel a little bit better when I heard the attitude change when they realized that I flew fighters, and then they started taking it a little serious. But it sort of more infuriated me because it shouldn't matter what I did in the past. It really shouldn't. Somebody comes up over the radio. It doesn't matter if it's somebody who, like I said, just started flying or an astronaut, right? They see something.
They're all held to the same standard.
Absolutely, right? It doesn't matter if it's a student pilot or Story Musgrave. It doesn't matter. Everybody should be taken at their word until they're proven otherwise. And if you are proven otherwise, that's going to be on you.
And have you thought about perhaps, how we could better understand what these are, how we could maybe reach some conclusion?
It would have been great. I mean, they have ready alert aircraft. I mean, it would have been awesome if they would have launched some F-22 Raptors up there to take a look at it. But, they're not seeing anything. But if you got multiple pilots reporting things all the time, why not do it? I mean, as a fighter pilot, I'd do it in a second. If I was on ready alert and I'm just sitting around the room waiting to get called to go do something in air interdiction, mean, that's what you're there for.
Yeah.
Especially as an Air Force guy, right? Why not send these guys up and try to do something? They have the most advanced radar.
I almost wonder if the commercial market could fill that need. If someone could provide a space-based sensing platform that linked right into the FAA and could look real time and see these results from a different angle.
That would be great if they could do something like that. I mean, Elon Musk that'd be the guy to do it. He's got so many satellites up there, right?
He does have a lot.
It'd be great to have somebody up there that could, maybe not him do it, but somebody, get some advice from him and watch what he's done and get up there and link up with him. Where
I mean, if they're putting lights off of the vehicle, we should be able to measure that in some sense.
somebody should be able to see it,
Yeah.
right? What's weird is nobody's reported anything like this from the ground, which is strange.
Well, who would like a pilot on the ground or a regular person?
Just people on the ground. If there's other instances of pilots seeing lights, and it's weird because I hadn't seen your podcast until recently, and I think they dubbed the UFO the racetrack phenomena off of your podcast, calling it a UFO racetrack pattern, but that's what we were seeing as a UFO racetrack pattern. So. Everybody's seeing these racetrack patterns. Some of them might be explainable. They might be satellites or something. But I know what I saw. There's no way there's a satellite.
Yeah.
It's impossible. Nothing's gonna orbit right over the top of you like that, and then something else join in from above. The satellites just don't do that.
Why did you call it a shooting star? Can you describe why you decided to name it like that? Did it have a trail?
No trail. It just looked like a, sometimes you'll see a shooting star. It'll come down, and you've got bright ones. You've got some that have these massive, huge trails. Obviously, depending on the density and the size of the object, right? Entering the Earth's atmosphere. But it just looked like a small shooting star is what it looked like.
But then it stopped.
It stopped and joined the formation.
Wow.
So literally, it literally came in and just joined the formation as it was circling.
It is pure slowdown.
Oh, yeah, it definitely slowed down. I mean, it just came in and stopped with the formation. It just came in and stopped.
Did the luminosity change as you detected these changes? No.
Looked, everything was exactly the same. The lights never. This was something else that you brought this up. The only time the lights would change intensity is when they orbited close to the aircraft. As they moved away from the aircraft,
That's right, yeah.
and as they came towards the aircraft, they were the same intensity. The only time they changed is on that one half of that loop.
The back end
As when they were circling by. That's the only time the lights got bright. Other than that, they stayed the same. And
They're
they
still
were
visible.
Oh yeah, absolutely. They never disappeared.
Yeah.
So the fact that people are saying you probably were looking at satellites. Well, satellites don't do 180 orbits like that. 180 and 180. They don't do that. It was basically like an Air Force grinder, right?
Yeah.
F-15's going to a grinder. That's what it was like. But it turned out there was about 7 of them at the end. It was really weird.
How did that all just conclude? How did you just
As they moved
descend,
over,
or-
no, as they moved over my aircraft, that's the last time I saw them. But it took place to probably over 20, 25 minutes, probably, roughly.
long?
Yeah.
Wow.
And then as they had moved over my aircraft, that was the last time I was able to visually see them.
And
once they
went out of your view, and then you just were never able to pick them up
Yeah,
again.
correct. They just
Interesting.
disappeared. And then everything else was follow up, with people calling me or getting emails or text messages and.
Yeah, let's talk about that. Why do you think they felt the need to kind of reach out to you and have that conversation after?
I was sort of shocked because I was a contractor on a flight on Twilight 670. And Twilight 670 is a aircraft that's owned by a prominent tech billionaire. So his aircraft is blocked. Nobody has access to that information. So they reached out to the controlling manager of that aircraft to get my personal information, because I'm not a full-time employee with them. I was just a contractor hired for that trip. So they reached out to them to get my information. It's the only way to get in touch with me. Only way to not even know who I was. So I don't know if I think it was such an impact on the center manager, air traffic control center manager, that he wanted to reach out to me, in my opinion, to say, hey buddy, you're not crazy. Here's the radar tapes. And I'm glad he did that, or we wouldn't have those radar tapes.
Yeah.
I'm glad he did that.
Well, they're corrupted now.
Oh,
it
yeah.
seems,
Well, supposedly corrupted.
And so, yeah, wow. That's incredible.
And for him to tell me that they had gone into an emergency meeting and come out, and when they came out, the radar tapes were corrupted.
What was the emergency?
Didn't tell me. He didn't know. He wasn't involved in the meeting,
Yeah.
but they were supposedly corrupted. So I hope I didn't put him at any peril or whatever by taking that data that he gave me and sharing it with the world. Because people have a right to know. I think if anything, any air traffic control should fall under whistleblower protection, right? They should be able to speak out if they're getting reports from pilots. They should be able to speak out about it. Who's going to hear about it? Air traffic control.
Frontline.
Of anybody else, of pilots and everything, it's going to be the air traffic control people that are actually getting the first-hand reports of everything from pilots, right? The pilots see it, but they're communicating over the radio. Air traffic, and that's an official government record, right? Over frequencies. And that stuff should be preserved, and not just for 60 days, 90 days, however long air traffic control has it, but when that kind of information comes, that needs to be flagged and kept permanently for analyzing.
Interesting.
That's what needs to happen. But as they informed me, if they were to come forward, nothing good would have came of it. Basically, they would have been lost their jobs, prosecuted, whatever. I don't know enough about air traffic control if they have to sign a non-disclosure or because they handle a lot of military aircraft, right? They might have some kind of clearance.
Security clearances, actually, believe it or not. A lot of controllers, I don't know what percentage of them do, but a significant portion do have, I think, at least a secret clearance. Because think about it. The president's flying around. There's, maybe a lot of things that would fall under being classified, but that is an option. So what I'm hearing is that, as we talk to more pilots and we figure out what the best reporting mechanisms are going to be for what you guys are seeing, there's also a consideration to ensuring that the FAA controllers have same access to that reporting mechanism. It sounds like maybe sometimes the pilots won't identify a report because of whatever reasons, and same thing on the controller side as well.
Yeah, I understand the controller's concern about if there's a top secret aircraft or something out there that
Certainly.
They're not supposed to talk about it, but somebody needs to get briefed on it. You don't just discount anything that anybody sees and say, oh, it's probably military or it's top secret. But
that's actively harming aviation safety if you do that.
is.
That's the bucket you're taken from if you choose that method.
Well, they're just demonizing anybody who's coming forward also. I mean, everybody's a whack job, right? That's the what people think. And nobody wants to get that stigma. I received so much of it after the stuff got posted online and on national news that I had everything from people calling me crazy to people wanting me to father their children because they think they have some kind of extraterrestrial connection. I'm telling you, it's out there. But I can understand the stigma by nobody wants to talk about it. But if you look at it as aviation safety, my reporting was for basically safety. Like, well, what the heck is this and what's it out here? And if you guys aren't seeing it, as soon as they said they didn't see it, that made me think, well, something's out here and air traffic control's not seeing it, but I'm seeing it. Could it be a safety issue with my aircraft? Could they collide with my aircraft? What about a passenger aircraft that's got 400 people on it? It's an aspect that everybody needs to consider. Air traffic control, the federal government, the private industry, everybody should have an open door policy to be able to discuss any information, anything they see should go into a database, and it needs to be verified. And not just verified by, it needs to be verified by people who know what they're looking at, right? You need a board of you need people that are air traffic control, you need prior military guys that have done air interdictions. It'd be great to have astronauts, all kinds of scientists, engineers, electrical, astrophysics, it'd be nice to have a whole board of people to actually get together and say, hey, this is what we have. Let's hear options. What is it?
Yeah.
But there's not right now. Nobody wants to talk about it. Everybody's scrutinized and criticized and laughed at.
I'm seeing that change a little bit.
I hope so.
From my perspective, I've been not receiving as much as it sounds like as you have been, but I've been engaging with the American Institute of Aeronautics and Astronautics, which is the largest air and space professional organization in the world with over 30,000 plus members. And we've established our own permanent committee within that organization to investigate unidentified aerospace phenomena. And yeah, I have seen, that skeptical take from people inside that institute. But we're at a point now where we've engaged with, we have about 45, 50 members, probably upwards of 1,000 years of, NASA experience spread out among the team. across industry and in the research labs. And these are, industry first, credible people that are putting real thought and real consideration into how we're going to understand this in the future. So I think that's really the best way to kind of move past that skepticism you see, is just having a normal, rational conversation about this, around the data about this, and making sure that we have the proper procedures in place to stop people from kind of giving into that fear-based response of laughing about this.
Yeah, it's just a stigma. And, something else I'd like to bring up is, how do we know this isn't some adversary country that's doing something within our airspace? So the federal government should take a really serious look at it.
They were in the ADAs, right? I mean, that's what that whole zone is for. That's the whole purpose of it.
Absolutely. And if it's some foreign adversary that's in our airspace that we don't know about, that air traffic control can't see, we need to know about it, regardless of what it is. It needs to be taken serious. And I hope they start taking things serious. I hope they start looking at pilot reports, and people feel free to come out and actually talk about it or report it without reprisal or, scrutiny or fear of losing your job. That's probably the big one. Nobody wants to lose their job.
It's a very, once you're kind of in a position in the airlines, you're kind of there. You have your number, and if you leave, you go back to the bottom. There's no transferring seniority around, correct?
There's nothing. Once you're gone, you're gone. Mm-hmm. And it could be as easy as the FAA pulling your medical. Yeah. They don't have to give you a violation. They don't have to do anything. They can wind up just pulling your medical.
You can do nothing wrong and just
nothing,
no longer be a pilot.
And you're gone.
Yep.
And in 10 minutes, you're gone.
Yep.
And a whole lifetime of work. I mean, I've been a pilot since I'm 16 years old. I'm going to be 53 this year, and this month. Oh. And my whole life I've been flying, and it could be over in a snap of a finger, a stroke of a pen.
Yeah, stroke of a pen. Do you still love it?
Oh, yeah, I love flying. I fly every day. I flew yesterday. I'm flying tomorrow and Monday, and it's great. I love flying. I went and actually bought a GoPro, and so now when I fly at night, especially at night, I put it on the glare shield of the Gulfstream, and I just record. And I'll go back through when I have time and start looking. You think about this: how many pilots in the air spend more time looking inside the cockpit than looking outside?
Oh yeah, it's a big problem.
Yeah, guys break out their iPads, and they're either watching movies or reading magazines, or they're doing something other than looking outside. Because once you get up into Class Alpha, there's nothing up there. You're on air traffic control. The autopilot's on. Nobody's out there looking in the sky. How many things are actually out there that they aren't seeing?
Exactly. It could be right next to the aircraft, and you don't have that great of a view, right? You can see maybe like 5% of the sky through your window. And yes, it's the 5% you care about in front of you, but there's a lot of space that you absolutely have no visibility on.
You think about how many airplanes, just commercial, forget the private, private and corporate. Just think about how many airliners are out there flying around, especially at night. Because if you're going to see something that has lights on it, you're going to see it at night, right? Think of how many airlines are out there flying at night all over the world. And if all those pilots were able to actually have some kind of system that would actually monitor the skies they're flying around, that would be incredible. You'd be able to see so many things.
Wow. Even
if they just incorporated it in the aircraft.
It sounds like you're seeing these things, on a somewhat consistent basis. Over the U.S. right now.
Right now, they're being seen all the time.
And this is happening right now.
In fact, right now, last night at 11:45 at night, I got a text message from a friend of mine, a Marine F-18 pilot that flies for FedEx, and he sent me a text message at 11:45 last night saying he saw some more orbs, I think is what he called them, light orbs, over northern Canada.
So how are we going to continue to gather data about this, for me, is kind of a concern, because what's the most likely tool everyone's going to use inside the cockpit? It's going to be their phone. They're going to want to try to take a photo. And of course, that's not the best sensor for doing this, but that's what you have with you.
Absolutely. What I learned out of all this is the phone is not the best camera system to capture anything. There's a lot of anomalies that can happen with the IR camera, IR strobe, autofocus. So that's why I went out and I bought a GoPro that I can mount, and it captures everything. It's got a pretty wide lens, and the quality of the video is pretty good, and it'll videotape a vast majority of the sky that I'd like to later go back and look at. Since your cockpit duties a lot of times brings you in the cockpit, you're changing frequencies and altitudes and airspeeds and programming the FMS. So you can't have your eyes out all the time. But if for other pilots, if everybody were to keep their eyes out and not focus on inside the cockpit. You know, when you can, when you're up
Yeah.
at cruise is where you're going to do it. There's going to be a lot more sightings. A lot of people are going to see things that are explainable and unexplainable. And it would be nice if they had some kind of video recording system that they could implement on aircraft to record every aspect of the flight at all times. I know they have the black box. Well, why can't they have some kind of video that records actual
Straight out
video?
the front, yeah.
Absolutely. A widescreen, panoramic, something that would record something outside of the aircraft. That would be great.
You have to promise the pilots it only faces forward, though, correct?
Pilots only face forward, but that doesn't.
No, that's where
they
you
could-
want to look anyways.
Yeah. Well, what happens if they put something on the aircraft? What if they put a little dome on top of the aircraft with a camera recording system on it? You know, it would be really interesting to see. Forget all the unexplained, even the explained. Just think of what kind of safety aspect that would have on the aviation industry in general, from everything, from being able to see things that close aircraft encounters to weather phenomena to, I mean, you name it. There's so many
Yeah.
different aspects that they could use that.
Just sell
as
the
a-
data to,
as a
you
safety,
know, yeah.
as something for safety. I
Yep.
mean, you never know, right?
So the way I understand it now, if a commercial pilot at a major airline was to pull their phone out and say, take a video of some strange object they were seeing or lights, that they would be breaking the rules most likely, because they're not supposed to have your own personal devices while you're flying. Is that correct?
Yeah, the FAA set that standard that you're not supposed to have your phone. You know, it's supposed to be in airplane mode. But if it's a distraction, they're worried about it, interfering with navigational systems. And it's up. It actually comes down to the FAR state. It's the actually pilot in command of the aircraft who makes that determination. But airlines, if they have a rule, you have to follow the rules set by the airlines, by the air carrier that
I
you're
see.
flying for. So they just don't want people in there filming. I mean, you're opening yourself for lawsuits, right? If something
Yeah.
happens. So I can understand the companies wanting to protect themselves and their investors from anything coming out of a video that might be shot inside of a cockpit, something where people could open up a lawsuit against them. I understand that portion of it.
Do you actively instruct right now?
Yes,
Do you talk to your students about this?
I do not. I don't talk to my students. They have enough on their plate to worry about with learning the aircraft, learning aerodynamics, and weight balance, performance. I wouldn't want to. I hate to use the word burden them, but
Yeah.
I wouldn't want to put any undue stress on them.
So it's pretty new pilots.
It's brand new pilots. I do train commercial. I do train guys for ATP and stuff. But when you get into higher ratings, airline transport pilot, which all airline transport pilot people
I've
have
got
to have. Those pilots, they have the bandwidth to actually
Yeah.
understand what you're talking about. And I talk about it with guys in the Gulfstream community, other guys. In fact, after my experience, what happened off the coast of California, the actual lead, they call it a CAM, certified aircraft manager,
Okay.
on Twilight 670. Him and I were talking, and when he used to fly, I believe it was P3s in the Navy.
yeah.
He actually saw, they were sent to intercept something in his P3, and they went out to intercept something. And he said he saw some stuff that he couldn't understand what it was. And then he also saw something in Pensacola, Florida, that was doing maneuvers at such high altitude. And he said there's no way it could have been anybody inside it, because they would have been killed because of the amount of G-forces that would have been pulled. So I had told him what I had seen, what happened on his aircraft, because he wasn't on the aircraft. He was with another contractor. Not 3 weeks later, he saw it. He saw something like that over, I believe it was like Ohio or something.
Something unexplainable or something visually representative of what?
They don't know
It's
what it
just
was.
seen, yeah, they
More lights.
just saw
I mean,
something they couldn't
more
explain,
lights
yeah.
that's falling in reference with a lot of the stuff the airline guys saw.
How common do you really just think this is? Just not even just the last 8 months, even, but just this whole topic just for pilots. I mean, just kind of zoom your way out.
Honestly, if I were to, my own personal guess would be it's been happening for years and years, and it's been happening ever since we started flying. But people just don't report it. People don't see it. People don't look out at the cockpit all the time. Like I said, when I made my initial report and I talked to the news, I told them, the second pilots start seeing this, it's like walking onto a stage. to give a speech. If you walk into a stage and an audience and there's 500 people out there, how many people feel comfortable walking out in the spotlight by themselves? Very few people. But you put 10, 15, 20 people out there, other people have no issue walking out amongst the crowd because now the spotlight's not on them, right? It's not spotlighted on them, it's on everybody, and they can hide behind people or, it makes them feel more comfortable. They're not being spotlighted. So I think once we get rid of the stigma of people being made fun of or, they understand that they're doing it for the better cause of aviation, for safety. Let's focus it all on safety. If they do it to better the cause of safety in aviation, I think there's going to be a lot more pilots that come out and talk about it. I guarantee there's a lot of pilots that have seen things. They just don't want to talk about it. They talk about it in their small little groups, but they'll never go public with it because they don't want people to think they're crazy.
And there really hasn't been any process or infrastructure or anyone to really talk about it too, right? I mean, from my perspective, at least when I was speaking about it first, a lot of it was very much entertainment based, or it was difficult to really have people who hadn't considered it look at it agnostically, in a sense, and so that's really what I think we're going to be able to do here. And my hope is that we'll have more pilots on like yourself, and you're welcome to pass an invitation. We're going to be looking to have fighter pilots, commercial pilots, general aviators here, and I want to hear more of these stories, and we'll discuss them seriously.
Yeah, to have a forum where they can actually go and feel comfortable talking, that's the key, where they're not going to get ridiculed. That's going to be the key to everything, because everybody wants their story to be heard, no matter what it is, how small, how big. Everybody has the desire to have their story heard, regardless of what it is. Yeah. But people don't, like I said, don't want to be ridiculed for it. Me, I don't care. I came out and talked about this because I made the call over air traffic control strictly because I'm doing my due diligence and my requirements as a pilot. Hey, see something, say something. Doesn't it? That's like what everybody says, right? See something, say something. And then it just sort of spiraled out of control when I started getting radar tapes and people calling me and the JTAC calling me. And I'm glad it happened that way because we've got all these other pilots that had seen it, and now they're coming forward and talking about it because they didn't feel comfortable doing it before. It took one person, the guinea pig, to step out in the spotlight, and now everybody else is jumping on the stage, which is great. I'm glad for that.
Well, I'd like to extend an invitation, I think, to FAA controllers as well as pilots to come on and talk about this.
I've reached out to them, and I'll continue to reach out to them. We're trying to get them to come forward. It'd be great if they could be protected under the Whistleblower Act. I don't know why it would have to be a Whistleblower Act, but it would be great if they could, just to come out.
Something to make them feel more comfortable.
Absolutely. You don't want somebody to lose their career over something like this.
They're in a very much kind of similar track as pilots as far as their career, huh? A little bit rank-based.
Well, they work right for the federal government, right? Air traffic control.
Yeah, very much so.
Yeah, right. So they can be terminated for cause at any time for anything. We don't know what kind of contracts they sign or what kind of security clearances they have to sign. It could be like the military, right? We're not supposed to talk about certain things when we leave the military. So they could be under the same guidelines with the FAA. But, the FAA is, I can't say anything bad about the FAA. The federal government, they just, they're not proactive, they're reactive, right? They don't do anything. They only do something when they have to do something.
Well, that's how it is, in the Navy. That's how we write our emergency procedures. And this is a little bit different tact, trying to solve the problem before, an aircraft is taken down. It's about being proactive. And this conversation that we're having now, I think, is really one of the first steps in being more proactive about this. And so, thank you for coming here today, Mark, and, being proactive and standing up and doing what's right, in my opinion.
It was my pleasure. I hope me coming out talking to you about this will encourage a lot more pilots to come forward and tell us what they've seen or experienced, or regardless of whether it's something that they might know what it is. Well, humans love mysteries, right? They love to solve the mystery. So that mystery's out there. We want it solved. Until everybody cooperates, we're not going to solve the mystery.
Yeah. One of the things that we're going to be doing with this podcast as well in the future, after we've brought on more pilots, is going to be exploring different technologies that might be useful in the future. Things that are available off the shelf, if you will, that perhaps could be modified so that we can work to build sensors and build technology that are going to be able to move the conversation forward proactively. So we intend this to be an active conversation. where we don't want to just, go our own ways after the conversation. We want to be able to take the great ideas and the new data that we have and go do something interesting with it. So you have applied to join the Integration and Outreach Committee, the UAP Integration Outreach Committee at the AIAA. So there's also a number of other pilots that have witnessed things just like this, both in the military and the commercial world, that have joined that organization in order to help advise on policy and reporting mechanisms. I've been invited the third week in January to Fort Lauderdale to attend a meeting with NASA's study team, UAP study team, and a senior member of the FAA will be there. So perhaps there'll be an opportunity for more clarity. So there are existing trusted resources for safety reporting within the military, commercial, and NASA, at the end of the day, holds the authority for aviation safety generally in the United States. And there are trusted programs that they've established. So we know how to do this, right? This isn't something we don't know how to do. We do this every day in this country, report safety hazards. So it's really just about updating procedures. It's a shame that our current procedures point us out to external just organizations to report this. According to current instructions, if you do see a quote unquote UFO in the manuals now, if you should like to report it, you don't have to, no desire or no necessity to do so. You can report to external organizations, and there's several of them, right? So the data is scattered and it's broken up, and none of it is official anymore. So really, there is no practical method for reporting this as it is right now.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yep.
Mark, thanks again for coming out.
Thank you. I appreciate you having me.
This was awesome.